You're listening to the SmackDown RunDown on the Angry Marks Podcast Network.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the SmackDown RunDown right here on AngryMarks.com, brought to you by WrestleWork, your online social media resource for all things wrestling. It is I, but my name is not Nikolai. He's out tonight, so I'm stepping in. My name is Stevie J. Normally you hear me on Thursday night AMP and Glove Up or Shut Up, but tonight I'm doing the SmackDown RunDown with my wonderful co-host, Rob the Many. Good evening, Rob.
Hey, Stevie, this is quite the difference. You're on the Thursday podcast, but an entirely different one.
Indeed I am. So we're changing things up. That's what you get when you come to the Angry Marks Podcast Network. It's never the same thing twice, always something new and unexpected. But that wasn't the opening of SmackDown. It was expected, and it wasn't new.
No, I mean, it was kind of, I felt like I was having flashbacks. Like I may have stepped into a loop, like Groundhog Day. That I thought for sure I was Bill Murray for a second there, because I could have sworn I saw the same promo Monday night from Seth Rollins.
I think the scriptwriters were out of ideas, and they just said, you know what, Seth? Do the same thing you did on Raw, and we'll just work an angle into it. And that's pretty much what happened. He came out and gave his litany of excuses. Oh, I was tired. I flew all the way to the East Coast to do the Today Show. I had jet lag. That's why Brock Lesnar didn't get his rematch. And then Brock Lesnar acted like a spoiled little brat, proved what an animal he is, an uncontrollable monster. So maybe he's not even going to get that rematch now, and that's fine with me.
I mean, not the fantasy book or anything, but couldn't they have just had him come out and challenge Brock Lesnar to a fight, knowing and having everybody at home know that he's suspended indefinitely, and like win by count out or something like that?
They've done that gimmick so many times, I think it would have been old hat to rehash it, but it's not a bad idea. Although,
at least it would have been repetitive.
It's true. And at some point I realized how repetitive this was, because I put in my notes for the show, if you want to know what this segment's all about, just go read Ian's Raw recap from Monday night, because he did a great job.
Yeah, about the only thing that came out of the promo at the start from the Authority was Kane made a match between Big Show and Orton as like right after the commercial break.
Right, but only because Orton came out and ran down the Authority, called them stooges and flunkies, and he got Kane riled up by saying at least Big Show is the only man in the ring who actually did something at WrestleMania. Where were you, and what does a director of operations really do anyway? And that's when Kane's like, well, guess what? This director of operations can do a lot. You're in a match with Big Show, and that starts next.
So for basically all intents and purposes, like if Triple H and Stephanie aren't there, he's basically the GM?
Yeah, he's like the third wheel behind Stephanie and Triple H. When they're not there, he gets to call shots.
I mean, this match wasn't bad. It's just, it was, you know.
It was a nothing match, really. It wasn't even a real match. It was, the whole point of this was for Randy Orton to hit a draping DDT, set up like he was going to get the RKO, and then have a big DQ schmoz when J&J Security and the whole Authority came in to beat him down.
Well, I mean, the rest of the night made this match stick out even worse, because, I mean, majority of the match we kind of got bullshit finishes of some sort just about every match.
Yeah, this was a night of DQs and talking. In fact, in my recap filling in for Nikolai, I dubbed this SmackDown is Talking, because we got a lot of promos, and a lot of filler, and a lot of time killer, and very little actual wrestling. And this wasn't much of a match, but it did set up one angle. It caused Ryback to come out and clean house, so apparently Ryback and Orton are sort of aligned together as the good guys.
Sort of. I mean, it's a loose. I think they're gonna keep it pretty loose. Although, it is 2 days in a row pretty much that they've kind of been thrown together. But I mean, right now they happen to have common enemies. I could probably see like a tag match, at Extreme Rules between like Show, Kane versus like Orton and Ryback.
No. The tag match would be at Raw because Orton and Rollins is already booked for Extreme Rules. So if they're going to do a tag, it'll be on Raw or SmackDown to fill time before the pay-per-view.
Yeah, that makes sense.
All right. Well, anyway, we move on to Natalya and Naomi, and the Bellas are acting totally clueless about Naomi being in the ring or being anything special, even though Naomi has gotten the best of the Bellas on several occasions now. And the line that just dumbfounded me is when they said, "Who even is Naomi?" I asked myself that, and I'm asking them back, do you not watch your own show? Do you not watch Total Divas? She's Trinity Fatu. How do you not know this?
Yeah, this match was really, really good. By the way, I mean, I try not to look at the Divas this way, but I could not help it tonight, Stevie. When I randomly looked up and all I saw was Natty's tits hanging out for all to see, I was very, very distracted.
And that's why we have an explicit rating on iTunes. Rob just went there.
What? What?
I don't think I have ever described a Divas match as I looked at her tits and they looked fabulous. Not that I haven't thought that, I've just never said it.
I mean, I try not to do that, but she caught me off guard today.
I guess she did, and you caught me off guard too, but I'm never caught off guard by Naomi's backside. It always looks good.
Oh, yeah, but you know what was the jarring thing about this match, Stevie? She didn't win with her, rear view finisher. She won with some kind of stupid finish, kind of similar to the spot Dolph and Bryan did on Monday night, where Dolph was kind of seated on his backside and kind of quote-unquote spiked Daniel Bryan into the mat. It was slightly different, but kind of a variation of that. I guess that's her new finish?
I described it as her snapping Natalya's neck to the mat with a head scissors. It was kind of like a leg scissors DDT.
Yeah, I didn't like it. Not super thrilled with it.
No, but I mean, it was an effective finishing move because I figured, okay, that kind of move, the match is over, and sure enough it was. So logically, my brain accepted that as a finish.
I mean, it's more of a finisher than her previous move.
Yeah, a flying butt is not really a finishing move. I love watching it, but it's not credible as a way to end a match. So
I could so see that being regulated to the signature move on future WWE 2K games.
Yeah, you never know. It just might be. But we had a segment afterwards with Kane, piss and vinegar. He's all fired up and he's mad. And Seth Rollins is all fired up and he's mad. And they're butting heads backstage, and Kane finally says, "You know what? I like the idea of you having a match at Extreme Rules, and I have the authority to do that, so I might just make that match for you. Seth Rollins and Randy Orton at Extreme Rules." And Rollins gets all livid about the fact that he's going to have to face Orton again, and Kane points out, "You're better than him. You can beat him." And Seth reacts, "This stinks." And Kane starts to object, and he goes, "No, this office actually stinks." And he walks out, and Dean Ambrose flushes the toilet. Wah, 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 wah.
Yeah, usually they save this stuff for Raw, but apparently now that they're going to try to take Raw a little bit more seriously, I guess SmackDown's going to get stuck with comedy like this?
I suppose so. But I did like the comeuppance of the whole thing was that Kane gets furious that his, quote, executive bathroom got used, so he books a match for Dean Ambrose where he gets to face Luke Harper, and the unstable Dean Ambrose has no problem with that because he wants a rematch, so he's like, "Hey, thanks," and he walks off all happy, and Kane is so mad that he's made Dean Ambrose happy that he throws down his drink. I thought that was cool.
Yeah, this is my wife's move when she really hates somebody. She does this to them and really tries to get under their skin that way.
Well, nothing gets under Dean Ambrose's skin. He's too crazy to get bothered by anything Kane does.
No. I mean, my wife usually pulls the Dean Ambrose the move, like where they're pumped up. She tries to paint it off like she's pumped about it or happy for them, and which just annoys them, and that's usually the way she goes about being catty. Yeah.
You're saying it's the diva move, like you can't make me mad. Too bad for you.
Pretty much, yeah.
I gotcha. So, speaking of SmackDown is talking, as I referenced earlier, we get a one-on-one sit-down interview with Roman Reigns and Byron Saxton to fill some time. The whole point I got out of this, Rob, was Roman thinks he had Lesnar beat. He only needed 2 or 3 more seconds, and he would have won the match at Mania. And he's probably right based on the way that match looked. But, of course, Seth Rollins cashed in, won the title. We all know what happens. But then he says it doesn't matter because I've already proven I can beat Lesnar, and I have beaten Rollins before, and I'll do it again.
I mean, yeah, I get it. But man, I just don't. I know that they keep trotting these out there, but this one seemed, I don't know, less personality driven than the previous ones, where he kind of seemed a little too relaxed. I mean, dude, you got fucked out of the world title. You should be pissed off. You should be like angry. You should be like, listen, don't even ask me any questions because as soon as I get my hands on Seth Rollins, I'm going to tear him apart. Like, and that should have been that. Like, this was just way too relaxed. I mean, you have to paint this guy as a badass. I mean, you did a good job, Mania, and it seems like their first 2 efforts after post-Mania have been pretty botched, pretty heavily.
Well, they can't ever figure out the right note to set with Roman Reigns, and they keep trying over and over again and mixing it up. Sometimes they want him to be funny and cute. Sometimes they want him to be calm and menacing. Sometimes they want him to be cocky and just full of piss, but they just ever can't pick a direction to stick with him. And I agree with you that...
Here's a crazy idea. Like, have, like, Byron ask him a question about, losing that match to Seth Rollins, and just have him do that same fucking stupid smile he was doing the whole Mania main event, and just slap Byron across the face. Go full Brock Lesnar mode. I mean, if F5 Inc. could get Brock over, then maybe like beating up Byron, the drizzling crap that he is, might get maybe Reigns just slightly over. And like kind of painted as like, listen, there are no questions. He grabs the camera, full out Joker this crap, grabs the camera, films himself and says, Rollins, I'm coming for you. Know where to hide, know where to run. I'm going to kill you, basically. There.
Honestly, I like that better than what they actually did, but that's not the creative team they have right now. So obviously you need to be working there. So what are you going to do?
I mean, I was just one idea off the top of my head. I mean, it fits better with the character that they established during Mania, and ever since then, it's like they haven't really known what to do with him.
Right, but this is going to go on until they figure it out. So we're just going to go on and continue with SmackDown because we had R-Truth and The Miz, and to make a long story short, Miz hits Truth with a skull-crushing finale and gets the pin. But then he eats a skull-crushing finale from his former assistant, Damien Mizdow, at which point Mizdow puts on the sunglasses and poses like The Miz. 2 thumbs up for that.
Match was a nothing match.
It was a nothing match, but the ending made it worthwhile.
Yes, but they need to quickly get Mizdow music, like immediately, and they need to make it something distinctive. I know, because here's the problem. When I came to play kicks on, the crowd doesn't know whether to cheer or boo until Miz or Sandow walk out. That's a big problem.
True. That's true. Well, all they really need to do is go back to his old gimmick where he came out in the bathrobe and just smiled and lectured the people and then finished with, "You're welcome," except make it a baby face instead of a heel this time.
I don't know. I don't have any good answers as to what to do with Mizdow, but he needs something to start to move him away from this. I know they still have to feud and all. I understand that, but they need to give him his own music. It just confuses the crowd. I think
probably at some point here in the very near future, possibly after Extreme Rules, they will. But the issue remains unsettled, so he's still going to have the music in the near term until the issue is settled.
Understood.
All right, so then we move on to one of the longest, if not the longest, talking segments of the night. John Cena coming out to talk about the U.S. title and declare that his former holder of the U.S. title, Rusev, was a, quote, douchebag, which got bleeped off the air. So he rambles on and on and on about the U.S. title being the land of opportunity and how he's going to give that opportunity to every star in the back, whether they're a B-plus player, an A-plus player, or the Bushwhackers. They all get a shot because it's an open challenge, open season. He'll defend the title anywhere, anytime, anybody. And Rusev and Lana come out to interrupt.
And Lana really didn't talk a whole lot. Rusev pretty much took the mic from her and went off on his own.
Except for her telling the crowd in Fresno to shut up. I love it when she says that.
Yeah, but the only thing that I'm kind of down on is that this means the feud is going into Extreme Rules. They make the match actually during this promo for Extreme Rules, and Rusev's taking another loss, and I know this will bring up a conversation between me and you. Again, I'm not quite sure how much it helps to have Rusev lose back-to-back matches to Cena.
Well, he's still going to come out of it as a bigger star. I don't worry about Rusev because he got a whole year-long push to this point. So even if he loses to Cena twice, he can still be a force to be reckoned with anywhere he wants in WWE. Because as Lana points out herself, he is twice the man that you are, Cena. Which made me wonder if she had personal knowledge of that fact.
But obviously we all know where this is going. I can't wait to see when they move Rusev away from Cena, just to see where they go with him after that.
And of course, we want to see if Cena and his open challenge means, we get some totally wacky, unexpected matches. Like, let's have Hideo Itami challenge Cena for the U.S. title. Why not?
Dude, the crowd would mark so hard for that.
I would mark so hard for that. But anyway, next up, we had the match that was made earlier in the night by Kane, Luke Harper and Dean Ambrose. Rob, your thoughts?
Man, this is the new Swagger versus Rusev feud, man. They bring this match out just to absolute death. My big problem with the match was a minor nitpick here. You're going to laugh over there, but it bothered the hell out of me is when Harper was on the outside and Dean did his whole suicide dive and Harper just kind of caught him, and he was, I guess, supposed to push him towards the ring, but kind of lightly pushed him, and Dean Ambrose just basically did his run towards the ropes and do his bounce back clothesline gimmick. But man, this looks super fake the way they did it tonight. It was this most puzzling, stupid looking thing I've seen in a long, long time. And then an absolutely furthering burial of this match, I would have to say this is the worst TV match I've seen in quite a few years. Probably since I don't know, name a random Divas match in the past 3 years, and this is probably right up there. Harper power bombs Dean Ambrose through the table, Stevie, and then there's nothing. There's no bell. There's no announcement. It's just the match is over. The referee stops it, and it's never clarified whether or not this was a DQ win for Dean. Nothing. It was just he just power bombed it through the table and end of segment. It was the stupidest finish I've seen in a match for quite some time.
All right. Well, I can't call it the worst thing I've seen on TV in years. That takes a lot of effort because I've seen a lot of things worse than this. But I was left as perplexed as you were. As I was recapping this match on behalf of Nikolai, I said, and I quote, "I can only assume that was a DQ win for Ambrose since this was not a stipulated no DQ or falls count anywhere match." But they never announced it. You're right about that. So we have to assume that Ambrose picks up the win because Luke Harper went excessive on the outside.
Yeah, I am speaking in hyperbole, of course, but it does drive me crazy when they give you a no finish like this. It just pisses me off.
This whole show was no finishes and talking.
Here's what I'm assuming happened here. Luke Harper kind of pulled like a Brock Lesnar where he came out to the table and took off the top of the table, set up for the powerbomb, and took out the monitors and threatened to throw the monitor at the Spanish announce team. So I'm guessing here that why the announcements and stuff like that wasn't made is the ring bell ringer guy and the announcer guy took off.
I'll buy that
to maybe try to sell like what happened like with Brock on Monday, like the fact that he came so close, maybe like people were like extra jittery and took off. But I mean, for that to be a viable excuse, they should have like mentioned that on the commentary.
Yeah, and they didn't. And neither did Wade Barrett when he came out to sit in on commentary for the main event, when they had to basically reassemble the table from scratch. But before we got to that point, we got the primetime players coming out to make fun of the New Day and call Xavier Woods PhD short for personal hair disaster. That's more your bad comedy that would normally be saved for Raw.
If that means it's going to be assigned to SmackDown, that means my chances of enjoying Raw are increasing.
I suppose so. Well, the main event, Daniel Bryan in a non-title match. His Intercontinental title was not on the line. Just a grudge between him and Sheamus. And Sheamus could not start this match without, guess what? More talking! He spent a good 5 minutes running down Daniel Bryan as a little runt. And it's just a sawed-off sort superstar is not worthy of a fella like me.
AKA the promo he should have cut on Raw.
Probably. But at least he's getting the crowd to hate him. He came out here and did his job. SmackDown is talking. At least this was effective talking.
The match was great. The match was like really, really good. Wade did a pretty decent job of being on commentary. At some point, Stevie, I don't know if you caught it or not, somewhere, somehow, Daniel Bryan got busted open during this match. And I, for the life of me, can't figure out how.
Well, I noticed it specifically after Bryan and Sheamus were trading headbutts on the apron. It had to have happened at some point before that, but I've been reading the news reports and filtering them into Angry Marks news reports, and one of the ones that I read before we did this show tonight was that there's some heat on Sheamus right now for being quote-unquote too reckless in the ring. So apparently during this match, he busted Bryan open hard way.
Yeah, you know what's it's interesting you mentioned that, Stevie, because I mean, if there's maybe a clip that you could pull from this SmackDown that might maybe like give some credence to that rumor, is that there was a point here where Daniel Bryan had Sheamus down and was palm striking Sheamus straight in the head, and he was actually hitting him, and it was pretty stiff. So I don't know if maybe that was receipt.
Yeah, that could have been a receipt. They could have been just deciding, screw it, we're gonna go balls to the wall. This is the main event of the show. Maybe they just got overexcited.
Yeah, but I mean, I can only imagine that, if that was not receipt, or if that wasn't like told to Bryan to do to maybe like get Sheamus to kind of lighten up a bit, that he could maybe see some trouble from that, because I mean, they are blows to the head and they try to steer clear of that in WWE.
Yes, they do. Although I will say, if it was not intentional, it still worked out in a good way, because they did a spot where Bryan was sent dazed to the outside because of the headbutts. He was standing there staggering, trying to get his wits about him, and Barrett jumped up from the commentary table and gave him the bull hammer right between the eyes, right where he was bleeding. So if you wanted an impressive visual, that was probably the move of the night on Barrett's part.
Yeah, I mean, had Sheamus not had the blood on his chest, and had the blood not been pouring out of the center of Daniel Bryan's head as he waited for the bullhammer, you could almost, if you weren't paying close enough attention, you could almost maybe pull like Wade Barrett busted him open. But I kind of dug it. I kind of get tired of seeing Daniel Bryan eat bullhammers, but I mean, it is what it is.
Right, and you mentioned the blood, and that was part of the visual that we got to end the match, was that Sheamus was trying to drag Bryan back toward the ring, but Bryan was dead weighting him, so Sheamus finally gives up and says, "Fuck it, fella," and just leaves him laying there in a heap, and gets back in the ring with his blood all over his chest and on his arm, and the referee counts to 10, so Sheamus gets a non-title win over Daniel Bryan by countout.
Another no finish, basically. Do you think that maybe this was an audible because he was busted open and maybe they couldn't close it? Because, I mean, technically, if it's bleeding bad enough, according to Jericho's podcast, they have to stop the match.
Right, they have to clean up the cut because, like you said, WWE is not about blood these days. So I can understand why you think that, but since it was at the end of the taping anyway, I doubt it was an audible. I think they actually want a non-title win over Daniel Bryan so this feud can continue, because they've been hot and bothered to do Daniel Bryan and Sheamus for a long time now, and because of various reasons, ways, and means, it has never come about. But now they can finally have this feud, now that they've turned Sheamus heel, and Daniel Bryan is the scrappy little babyface with the Intercontinental title, so they have to give Sheamus a win over Daniel Bryan, even if it's a cheap win, so that this feud continues.
No, that makes sense. I was just thinking out loud on that one. It just kind of, I mean, you're right. It does seem like it was supposed to end that way, but I mean, sometimes you just don't know, because some of that referee stuff, it can be kind of screwy.
It can indeed. But this all makes sense to me, and I've sort of kind of hinted that this was a lot of bullshit, a lot of false finishes, a lot of just fuckery all around with too much talking, but I actually didn't hate this show. I would still give SmackDown a thumbs up.
I mean, it was an enjoyable show, albeit somewhat frustrating show, because some of the matches that I kind of was interested didn't get enough time, or you didn't get quite a satisfying ending to the match. That's the only thing. Is like every time I kind of started to enjoy the show, there'd be another promo that felt kind of samey, or there'd be like a no finish, and I was just kind of like, well, that was kind of meaningless.
Yeah, there's a lot of that, but there's a reason SmackDown is the B show, is that a lot of the things that happen on SmackDown are either, one, a repeat of what happened on Raw for a different audience, or two, don't matter in the grand scheme of things. But at least my takeaway from the end of this show is they did something that matters. They set Sheamus up to challenge Daniel Bryan down the road. So I guess when the ending continues a storyline that I'm interested in, I can take that away as a positive.
Yep. Yeah. It's kind of nice that sometimes they do this, even though that SmackDown is the B show. Sometimes they do kind of test stuff out like this on SmackDown, and then kind of make sure they confirm it for Raw. And they did that for the multi-tag team match. They did that for the IC ladder match going into Mania, and this continues it. That sometimes they kind of set up a future match on SmackDown, and then kind of carry it through on Raw.
Yeah, they did a good job of that building up to Mania. They did it again here. So WWE for once actually seems to be firing on all four cylinders. Even if we don't get everything that we want, we get everything that we want going in the direction that we want.
Yep.
All right. Well, I think that's just about going to do it for SmackDown Rundown tonight. And before we go, we'll throw out some cheap plugs. Everybody should check out Over the Top Radio on Friday nights, 9 p.m. Eastern, 8 Central, with your host Ed in San Antonio and his co-host Craig and Cottrell. I'm sure they'll have a lot to say about the WrestleMania weekend, because Ed was out there shepherding people to and fro on a bus that he rented himself. So he's got a lot of stories about all the fits, all the places, all the things they did. And then, of course, on the weekends, you'll get episodes of JGW when Jordan Garber is available to do them. He's always getting interviews with special guests, big names from the world of wrestling. You don't want to miss that, nor do you want to miss Raw Reaction on Monday nights, which is usually Angry Tensai and Vic. But just like tonight with the SmackDown Rundown, sometimes the lineup changes. You never know. You've got to be prepared for that. We'll have something happen. Sometimes Ian Clark will step in and do the show. Sometimes Rob the Many will do the show. You never know. But on Tuesday nights, it's almost always the same crew. William Huckabee, Zane Paisley, and the Prophet Rick Craig hosting the Undisputed Wrestling Show with the top names from past WWF, current Ring of Honor, independent wrestling, all the different guys out there that they can talk to. They get them booked for the show and do great interviews. So check that out on Tuesdays. Wednesdays, you've got Glove Up or Shut Up with myself and Peter H. And then come back around to Thursdays. We didn't have a show tonight on Thursday Night AMP because Jordan was sick, but here I am on the SmackDown Rundown with my great co-host, Rob the Many. Rob, anything you want to plug?
Nothing to plug here, Stevie. All I'll say here is that Chris Jericho, you can deny being a sellout all you want, but you are worse than Metallica, my friend.
Oh, wow. Where did that come from?
He had me all fired up after listening to his podcast earlier today. Basically, he's really in super defensive mode because I guess he's been getting a lot of tweets from fans basically calling him a sellout. basically because his podcast was picked over Stone Cold, et cetera, et cetera. He's kind of really been going to bat for Roman Reigns, et cetera. And basically he like went full bore, like crazy town banana pants on fans on his podcast. Going so far as to say like accusing fans of catcalling the dad of Connor, during his speech, and saying that if anybody had enough balls to do that when he goes in the Hall of Fame, he'll stop mid-speech and go out and kick their ass, which I would love to see, by the way, because like they would sue him for like all the money in the world.
Yeah, that's not going to happen, but I did hear that he'd gotten a little riled up. I didn't actually hear the podcast, but it sounds like that episode of Talk is Jericho might be one for the ages. Is that the same one where he and Edge review WrestleMania?
Yes. Very, very positive reviews. I mean, I like the show too, so there's not too much I can argue there. But I mean, they're definitely, you could see why WWE might be moving towards the Jericho podcast because it's a lot more company friendly. Basically,
well, there are additional issues, Rob, and I'm not going to get into the litany of issues between Vince McMahon and Steve Austin. You're going to have to read my news update for that, but just suffice it to say, too much time to talk about it on this show, but yes, there are other reasons they're going with Jericho besides the fact that Jericho is towing the company line. Yeah,
but with that perception out there, this podcast didn't help him escape that perception. Matter of fact, it put a magnifying glass on it, and it turned a hardcore Jericho-holic Mark like myself into hating this man. So, I mean, that's how drastic I felt he went on the podcast, because I am myself like a big mark for Jericho all the way back to like Nitro days. And like when he came over to WWF, I mean, I marked out like a 5-year-old when he came out and interrupted The Rock. And it's just like today was the first time where I really just didn't like Jericho. And I mean, I never thought I'd ever say that.
Well, you know what? Then everybody can go check out Talk is Jericho after this show. See if you agree or disagree with Rob. It's a free show, and I haven't heard it yet, so I'm still a Jerichoholic, but maybe I'll change my mind too after I listen to it. And if I do, I'll tell you all about it next week on Thursday Night AMP. But that's
he does. I will say this: he does try to walk it back at the end with some lighthearted jokes, but in my opinion, he burnt that bridge a little too far for me to kind of let him walk it back all the way back.
All right, Rob. Listeners will have to check out that show, and I'll have to check out that show because I can't give you my opinion until I listen to that show. So that's just going to have to be it for tonight. That's all for the SmackDown Rundown. For myself, Stevie J, for my co-host, Rob Domeni, for our producer, Kelly Kev, and for the absent Nikolai, who will be back next week. Thanks for listening. Have a good night, everybody.